This video is intended for any who are interested in knowing how grading will work in my course. What does it take to get an A? Well, it's easy enough to answer. Over the course of the semester, you will earn points, and at the end of the semester, the number of points you have accumulated will determine your grade. There are 500 total points available in this course. You will have 3 of what I'm calling response assignments. Each of them will be worth 100 points for a total of 300 points. The course will also have 5 discussions. You'll only be graded on 4 of them. So if you do all 5, I drop the lowest grade. Your participation in each discussion is worth up to 50 points. 4 discussions at 50 points each makes 200 points. Combined with the response papers, that makes 500 points. The more points you get, the better your grade, as shown in this chart. You'll also see this breakdown in the syllabus in the tab called Assignments and Grading. At this point, the next question will likely be, what are these assignments like, and how do I get the most points from each assignment? Well, let's look at them. And I'll start with the response assignment. For a response assignment, I'm going to ask ChatGPT to write an essay on some topic relevant to this course. For example, I may ask ChatGPT to write an essay on capital punishment. I will show you ChatGPT's answer to my question and then ask you to assess its answer. Your mission will be to assess 5 arguments found in the ChatGPT response. You may seek to either criticize or to defend any of those arguments. 5 assessments at 20 points per assessment will equal 100 total points for the assignment. For example, I did ask ChatGPT to write an essay on capital punishment. A part of the answer it gave me to my question included the following, quote, "One of the primary moral arguments against capital punishment is rooted in the belief in the inherent value of human life. This perspective asserts that the state should not possess the authority to deliberately take a life, regardless of the crime committed. Supporters of this view contend that capital punishment contradicts the principles of compassion, forgiveness, and the potential for rehabilitation." End quote. Okay, this is one of several arguments that ChatGPT provided, but let's say you want to respond to this one. Let's consider some possible responses that you can make. Let's look at the F-level answers first. This is any answer that can earn you between 0 and 11 points out of 20. If an assessment is missing, if you only give me 4 out of 5 assessments, or you give me 0 out of 5 assessments, any assessment missing will give you 0 points. A response like, "Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man," will fare little better than no answer at all. As will a response like, "I agree," or "That's wrong," answers that give a vote but don't provide an argument. I'm expecting you to provide an argument for your position. Now, a D-level answer, one that's worth 12 or 13 points, will at least provide an answer, but one that doesn't require any thought. This would be an answer like the following, quote, "I agree with this. I believe in the sanctity of human life. Because of the sanctity of human life, it's wrong to kill somebody. Human life is sacred. All killing is wrong. I just don't think we should be killing people. It's wrong." End quote. It doesn't say very much. Mostly it just expresses an opinion in more words. But the words at least contain a shred of an argument. This is in the second sentence, where it says that one thing is true because another thing is true. Now here's an example of a C-level answer, which would be worth 14 or 15 points. Quote, "A stable and orderly society is founded on the principles of law and justice. Capital punishment plays a crucial role in maintaining social equilibrium by signaling that the state will not tolerate the most grievous violations of these principles. By removing individuals who have demonstrated a blatant disregard for human life, the death penalty sends a clear message that certain actions are incompatible with the values and norms that underpin society." Unquote. What's wrong with this answer? A part of the problem with this argument is that it doesn't address the argument that ChatGPT provides. I could read this without even knowing the question as an independent argument in defense of capital punishment. And it's not a particularly good argument in defense of capital punishment either, since it's vulnerable to many criticisms. For example, take the claim, "The death penalty sends a clear message that certain actions are incompatible with the values and norms that underpin society." While in a slave society, whipping a slave would send a clear message that certain actions are incompatible with the values and norms that underpinned a slave society. But that wouldn't prove that slavery itself or the whipping of slaves is justified. Now, a B-level answer, something that's worth 16 or 17 points, would look something like the following. Quote, one of the arguments that ChatGTP provides says that capital punishment is wrong because of an inherent value in human life. We need to understand in this answer how an inherent value in human life can yield a prohibition on capital punishment. We can question this implication on the grounds that if human life has such value, then preventing murders would be a good thing. After all, by preventing murders, we would be preserving these inherently valuable lives. If capital punishment deters murder, then capital punishment would be protecting intrinsically valuable lives. This, of course, would only be true if capital punishment is an effective deterrence. That might not be true. However, the argument needs to show that it isn't true in order to get to the conclusion that capital punishment is wrong. End quote. This B-level answer actually responds to the argument that ChatGTP provided, and it provides a criticism of that argument by showing that its conclusion doesn't come directly from its premises. First, it states the argument, and it gives a reasonable interpretation of that argument. One thing to avoid is straw manning an argument, and this refers to the practice of giving a weak interpretation to an argument that's easy to criticize. This response then provides an objection to that argument by arguing that even if the claim is true that human life has intrinsic value, more needs to be said before one can get to the conclusion that capital punishment is wrong. For my example of an A-level answer, I'm going to use the B-level answer and then just take the argument a bit further. In this A-level response, the author assesses the merits of their own response. The author adds the following, quote, however, another way to interpret the argument is to ground the wrongness of capital punishment on the intrinsic wrongness of killing. Perhaps this is the interpretation we should give to ChatGTP's statement, quote, the state should not possess the authority to deliberately take a life, end quote. To illustrate this, we can imagine that it would be possible to save some human lives by taking an innocent homeless person, cutting him up, and using his organs to save the lives of 5 people who need organs. The idea that life has inherent value might imply that this is legitimate, since it saves 5 lives at the cost of 1. However, the idea that it's intrinsically wrong to kill prohibits us from cutting up an innocent person and using his organs, even if doing so will save 5 intrinsically valuable human lives. By analogy, one can argue that it would be wrong to kill 1 convicted criminal to deter 5 murders. Killing itself is intrinsically wrong, end quote. This A-level answer considers the objection provided in the B-level response and answers with an even stronger interpretation of the argument that ChatGTP provides. In this response assignment, I'll be looking for you to provide 5 responses of this type, and each of them will be worth up to 20 points, for a total of 100 points. You'll have an opportunity to practice this skill and get some guidance by your participation in the discussion assignments. The discussion assignments will begin with an initial post worth 10 points. This is required to get you into the door to see the rest of the discussion. In your initial post, you'll defend a position on an issue, and the better your argument, the more points you'll get. Once inside, I want you to provide 2 response posts to the arguments that your fellow students have made on this issue. These response posts will be graded in the same standards that I'll be using to grade your response papers above. You'll be free to make more than 2 response posts if you wish. In fact, I would encourage it. The more practice you get, the better. And then the grade will be based on the 2 best responses. For example, let's assume that in the discussion, a student gives the A-level response that I provided above. This was the response that said that capital punishment is wrong because killing is wrong, even when it will save lives. Another student may give this A-level rebuttal. Quote, this argument ignores the fact that there is a significant moral difference between killing an innocent person to harvest their organs and executing a guilty person. Let us imagine somebody who has taken 5 hostages and is threatening to blow them up if his demands are not met. A sniper has a chance to shoot and kill this individual. we can see that killing this individual is morally quite different from killing a homeless person to harvest his organs. The hostage taker has, in effect, brought the fate upon himself by acting with a disregard towards the well-being of others who are themselves innocent. It would, of course, be great if we could create a society in which nobody is willing to harm another person, but such a society does not exist in reality. In reality, we have to deal with those who kill and threaten innocent people. It is innocent life we need to protect, not the lives of those who threaten or prey upon the innocent. End quote. Note how the response not only gives the conclusion that the previous argument was flawed, much more importantly, it provides evidence that points out that flaw. Providing argument and evidence is the core of a philosophical response. Now back to the mechanics, there are 5 discussions being offered in this course. Your final grade will depend on your participation in 4 of them. If you participate in all 5, I'll take your highest 4 grades. Of these, participating in the first discussion will be of the greatest importance, since this will align you to giving better answers in all of the assignments that follow. Okay, now, before I go, I want to say a few things about what to avoid in your responses. First, make sure you focus on the argument and not the person. There is never any good reason to say anything about the person who wrote the argument. In fact, pointing to the person who wrote the argument as a reason to reject the argument is recognized in philosophy as a fallacy, called an ad hominem fallacy. Notice that in my examples above, there was no name calling, no insults, nothing that can be taken as a personal attack. The focus was on the argument and identifying the argument as sound or unsound. Also note that the sample responses didn't make any reference to conservatives or liberals or wave any other tribal flags. These would also be ad hominem attacks, but ad hominem attacks that target a group rather than an individual. Responses that wave tribal flags generally seek to create or promote tribal conflicts, to turn the question into a conflict between us versus them, which is of no benefit in advancing knowledge or understanding. Third, you should avoid straw manning an argument. As described above, straw manning an argument is giving a particularly weak interpretation of an opponent's argument that's easy to criticize. One then gives the easy criticism and considers the job done. Philosophical discussions follow a rule that's called a principle of charity. You look for the strongest possible interpretation of the opposing position, and that's the one you respond to. Notice that the first A-level response I gave above didn't even attack the argument. It strengthened and defended the argument. To tear down is easy. To build up, that's a bit more difficult. Fourth, your contributions must be your own. If you represent somebody else's answer as your own, that would be dishonest, and there could be severe consequences. This includes answers obtained by chatbots. Besides, nobody's ever learned how to play the piano by having somebody else do their practicing for them. At the same time, feel free to talk with your friends, family, neighbors, strangers that you pass on the street or meet in a bar, assuming you're old enough to go to bars. Ask them, what do you think of this argument? And if they have criticism, don't feel insulted. If you have a response, that's great. If not, then they've saved you from using a flawed argument. Feel encouraged to do outside readings. If you do that, try to focus on those who are giving strong arguments and not merely ranting. After this course is over, the one thing I want you to walk away with is a particular skill. When somebody presents a case to you to try to get you to adopt a particular position, I would like you to have an improved ability to identify and assess the merits of their argument. Whether you're on a jury being asked if the accused is guilty or innocent, deciding on a policy for your company, or considering the merits of a proposal, the ability to assess arguments has been the most valuable thing that I've gotten out of my study of philosophy, and I hope you find it useful as well.